Welcome back, learners. We're going to continue with our revision lesson today. The context of our lesson is that we're revising environmental studies. We've looked at some terms and we've had an overview of all the important concepts. Let's try and apply our understanding now to the concepts of biomes in South Africa. So I've got a question on the various biomes. Let's see if you're able to assist me to be able to identify the biomes and questions based on this. So the question reads, study the map below where South Africa's terrestrial biomes are indicated with numbers and answer the questions that follow. So here we've got a map of South Africa and indicated on this are the various biomes. And these are numbered with numbers, as you can see, numbers 1 to 5. So we've got these various biomes that have been indicated. Also on these are an illustration of the unique species of plants as well as animals found in this. And it's important that we recognize that if you're able to recognize these biomes, that you're able to identify the unique species of animals and plants that inhabit these areas. It's often that a question is based on your understanding of identifying a biome as well as being able to comment on the unique species of plants and animals found in there. My advice to you on learning the biomes would be to first be familiar with the geographical location of these biomes. So create a color map and color these out. Have a key in which you create a key to remember where the locations of the various biomes are. In addition to that, create a little table in which you identify per biome what the plant and animals that are found there, so unique plants, unique animals, and if you can note a few points on the temperature or the climate that is experienced. So that is helpful when trying to have an understanding of the 7 different terrestrial biomes. So let's try and hope you can refer to those notes and assist me in answering these questions. So the first question, we've got to identify biomes numbered 1 to 5 on the map. As I mentioned, if we go back, we can see that these biomes have been illustrated and outlined on the map. Let's try and find biome number 1. So biome number 1, I'm going to circle that out for you, is in these areas here. I'll give you a little while to process that information. What's important is that you recognize the location of this area. So here we are in the southern tip of South Africa. Here you can find Cape Town, and you can find these areas here that are highlighted with that area 1. And often it becomes very difficult for you to figure that out if you see it in this context in a black and white image. But here you can see the numbers scattered around, and that's number 1 there. Okay, so I'm going to park that for you for a little while and let's see if you can get that. The next area that we need to label is area number 2, and here you're seeing a unique plant species that is found in this area here. Again, a very interesting example would be to be able to identify the plant species. And this is area number 2. It does get confusing with the red pen, but I'm not going to highlight too much of that. As we move up, it's important that we find area number 3 and help me find area number 3. And this is the one area that is right down there at the bottom. And if you think about it, it's probably the smallest biome in South Africa where it takes up the least area. And if you look at it, it's found around the George area, and it shows you a very small area that has currently the presence of that area. The next area is area number 4, and if you look at it, it's probably situated, if you look at it, a larger part of the environment, and that's essentially making up a large area where we have these unique species of birds that are found. And finally, area number 5, which we see all the way up here, which we identify with the big game that we see, which is unique to that habitat. So let's see if you got this right. So we've gone through the areas. I hope that looking at these indicators in the map where we've got plants and animals can assist you in being able to identify the different biomes. I've been able to write down these answers, and so when I switch my slide, I'm hoping that you guys can check your answers in the next slide. So as I mentioned, this area here, number 1, guys, points to the Cape Fynbos. Again, unique towards the Cape Town area. It's kind of towards the southern tip. Again, it's unique in that you're able to identify that by the species of plants that are found there. So here we're seeing the proteas. We also know that the Cape Fynbos is identified by the plants that are unique to this habitat, often referred to as an ecological hotspot. Again, an area that has unique plants that are found nowhere else in the world but endemic to that area. So that's area number 1. Area number 2 is called the succulent Karoo. And so this is along the west coast of South Africa. And you can see that this area is an area that is obviously along the western coast, but it's prevalent along most of the western towards the interior of that. And it has these unique plants that are called succulents that are adapted to the extremely dry conditions and arid conditions in that area. Finally, if we move to area number 3, and as I pointed that out towards the George area, it's in this area, it's the small scatterings of this area, and this is the forest biome that we referred to. The next area, number 4, was the grasslands, and these are the areas that are towards the central Gauteng, Limpopo, coming down towards the northern KwaZulu-Natal regions. So that would be your grassland. And finally, if we look at further up into the northern parts of Gauteng, in Bloemfontein, up that way, those would be the savanna region. Again, unique in that you've got your big 5 game that is predominantly found in those areas. So I hope that you're able to carry out this exercise referring to your notes and be able to identify the unique species that are found. Again, I often use a map of South Africa to look at the provinces and link that to the biomes, and it does help because it gives you context to the location if those are not shown on the map. Right, so the next question. Write down the number and the name of the biomes in which you will find the following plant species. As I mentioned, our biomes are characterized by the unique plants and animals that we found. The expectation from the teachers is often that you're able to identify a biome from the species that are given to you. So that's essentially what this question is designed to do. So the vuggies, the quiver tree are given to you, and these are uniquely found in a specific biome in South Africa. And I hope that you guys can recollect that, and we're going to try the next one, and we'll go and look at both together. The yellowwood and stinkwood trees are also found. So I'm going to very quickly move on to this. So if you're looking at your quiver and your vuggies, these are found in the succulent Karoo. And here you can see an image of a quiver tree there. And so your succulent Karoo is unique in that it has these species of plants found in there. The next would be your yellowwood and your stinkwood. These are trees that are found around your forest biomes, and that would be in area 3. Okay, we move on to the next bit, and where we expect to do the same. But plants or areas in biomes that have proteas, ericas, and your ristios. So again, here on the map, clearly seeing an area which has the proteas. So that would be your fynbos, and that's in area 1. Sweet and sour grasses, again, this would be in areas that have a predominance of types of grass that are unique in those areas. And if we look at that, again, that's in your grassland in area number 4. So these are areas that have predominantly grass that is either the sweet or sour grass, which are unique to the habitat and attracts certain herbivores that prefer that. So it's important that you recollect that. And finally, plants such as the mopane, the monkey thorn tree, as well as the baobabs, which are found predominantly in area 5. And here's a beautiful image of a baobab tree that's found in that location. As we get through further into the question, let's see if we can get into the next bit. Which biome is the home to many game farms that attract tourists? Guys, we know that South Africa is unique for its biodiversity, but what is often a point of attraction from tourism is your big 5. And so the big 5 are predominantly found in your savanna region. So we talk about our savannas being an area that has an abundance of your big 5. The next question. Which biome is the main tourist attraction during spring, where the whole area is covered with flowers? And so guys, I've got an image on the next slide which shows you a beautiful image of these plants that are predominantly flowering in spring. It forms an amazing landscape to be able to see these areas with many different flowers that are beautiful and come up in this specific time. And we have many people that actually visit our country specifically for this blossom of flowers that we see at one time of the year. And this would be your succulent Karoo. And here's an image of the big 5 that we would find in your savannas. So guys, essentially we got to be able to understand that our biomes are unique, and they're characterized by these plants and animals, and knowing that will often help us to be able to link that to an answer in a question. Finally, let's get to the last question in this. Which biome includes one of the world's richest floral kingdoms? So guys, we often refer to the Cape Fynbos being a unique hotspot in South Africa because of the types of plants that are found there that are unique. It's important that we're able to recognize this area as the Cape Fynbos. And if you look at it, it's a massive, beautiful arrangement of various endemic plant species that are found naturally in this area. Again, a rich hotspot of the floral kingdom around the world. Lots of endemic species exclusive to this area. It's amazing how beautiful these look when all the flowers blossom at the same time. Was I too short there? I can go on, but can I go? Okay, I saw 2 minutes and then I wasn't too sure if I was overstaying my role. Okay.
You usually are, that's fine.
You're supposed to sign that. I'm not supposed to hear that. Okay. Okay. Let's look at a few definitions as we wrap this segment up. The concept of endemic. Guys, it's important that we recognize, as I've just mentioned, the Cape Fynbos is home to endemic species of plants. And the concept of endemic refers to plants that are found exclusively in an area naturally and nowhere else in the world. So when we refer to endemic species, we refer to those species of plants that are found in one specific habitat naturally and nowhere else in the world. The next concept are alien species. And as we know, the concept of alien refers to something that's from another part of the world or extraterrestrial. When we look at species that are alien, these are species of plants or animals that are brought in either by man or naturally into an area, not by choice, but carried into that area. And they inhabit that area, affecting the natural plants that live in that area. So we talk about your alien plants being invasive, in the sense they now use more of the resources and they affect the plants that live naturally in that area. And that takes us to the next concept of indigenous species. And so the concept of indigenous again refers to species that are found naturally in an area. They may be found in different parts of the world, but they're naturally found in that area, and that's the concept of indigenous. As we wrap this up, we need to recognize that the concept of extinction or extinct species refer to the species of plants or animals that no longer exist. And that is important for us to recognize as a concept when we look at biodiversity. And finally, biodiversity refers to the variety, diversity is variety of living organisms that are found, especially in the context of our South African environments. So, as I mentioned, it's important that we have an overview of the summary, the concept of an ecosystem. As we've discussed, that again refers to the biotic and the abiotic factors. We also mentioned the abiotic factors as the non-living components in an environment, and we recognize that these influence the environment and how other organisms live in that. And these included the factors such as your physiographic factors, your edaphic factors, which was soil, as well as the factors in terms of light, temperature, rainfall, etc. So again, we need to recognize that these are factors that influence the environment and the living organisms. We also went into studying how energy flows in an ecosystem, and we illustrated that by using what we refer to as a food chain, which starts off with the producer and then illustrates how energy is passed down from primary producers, consumers, to your secondary, and then you finally your tertiary consumers. It's important that we recognize that in a food chain, there are several levels of organization, which we refer to as your different trophic levels. And this essentially shows the flow of energy in a food chain. Food chains, as I mentioned, describe the relationships linking producers, consumers, as well as decomposers, and it shows you how energy flows. We also mentioned that energy can be illustrated in pyramids. We also have pyramids to show you the number of individuals at different levels in an ecosystem. So we refer to those as your number pyramids. And finally, we also can look at biomass as a measure of energy in an ecological area, and that again can be represented using your ecological pyramids. Okay, So the next bit is, let's revise these through a question where we often get options that are confusing. And so in this next question, you've got to be able to know your content really well. These terms are often confusing and requires that you analyze these descriptions and be able to link them to the correct term. So I'm going to read through the questions so that you have an understanding of how to answer these. So state whether each of these phrases in column 1 applies to A only, B only, both A and B, or none in column 2. And you've got to write down A only, B only, both A, B, or none next to the question numbers. So guys, in this question or these types of questions, there are 4 possible options for each answer. So this requires that you read through the question carefully and weigh out each term and see if that is relevant to the description that is given in column 1. Often, in haste, we get learners that make an incorrect choice. And in reflection, once they've written that assessment, go back and said, had I known this or had I read this properly, I would have got this correct. So spend some time, read these options well, and make the correct choice, knowing that you've read it carefully. So let's try and apply that concept now. So as I mentioned, these columns have a term or a description, and we've got 2 possible terms, of which there are 4 possibilities. Either A, that is correct, B, both A and B, or neither of them, and we use the word none. So I'm going to engage with you on each of these, and hopefully you're able to respond accordingly. So the first term is animals that eat plants. Guys, we do recognize that that animals that consume plants are your herbivores or your primary consumers. So let's remember that these terms, primary consumers, again refer to those that are the first level of consumers. So again, your herbivores are your first level of consumers. Herbivores, as I mentioned, these are organisms that feed on plant material. So in the context of eating plants, it could be both A and B that are correct for this answer or for this statement. The next concept of living factors. So again, just 2 words. Let's see if these, which are the most appropriate descriptions. So biotic, yes. Abiotic, again guys, these are your non-living components. So in this question, the answer is A only. And notice that I am following the instructions. The instructions indicated that write down A only or B only. And it's important that I follow instructions and I write down exactly what the examiner needs me to write. The next concept is soil factors. So when we look at soil factors, again, soil factors refer to the factors that affect the soil. So this would include the pH, the humus content, water retention capacity, the air retention capacity. So again, the concept of altitude is not a soil factor. It is a factor that relates to physiographic or the layout of the land. Edaphic factors are again factors that affect the soil. So that would be B only. The next term is consumers. Again, consumers may vary at different levels in a food chain. You get your primary consumers, you get your secondary consumers. So let's look at these descriptions. Your autotrophs are the producers, so they are certainly not consumers, but your heterotrophs are those individuals that consume other autotrophs. So the answer there would be B only. Cool. Physiographic factors, and I often help myself by reminding me that the physiographic factors are the lay of the land. So in terms of this includes slope, altitude, and aspect. Let's see which of these are correct. So as I mentioned, slope is correct, altitude is correct. So it's both A and B are correct in this case. The next description is inactivity during winter. So guys, we know that some animals, to avoid the harsh environmental conditions or the extreme drop in temperatures, will go through a process of a winter sleep. And that process is called hibernation. We also know that there's a term called estivation, which is again a summer sleep, and that is to avoid the unfavorable or the extremely hot conditions. So here we've got 2 terms, hibernation and estivation. As I mentioned, hibernation is a term that describes the winter sleep, and estivation is a term that describes a summer sleep. And so the answer here is A only. Water bodies is the next term. And so water bodies in the context of the biosphere are referring to those components that make up the hydrosphere. So the context of this answer would be A, B only, whereas lithosphere refers to the soil. So the answer there was B only. And finally, the zone of life on Earth, again, the zone of life on Earth is the biosphere as well as the lithosphere. So both of these, the biosphere includes the lithosphere, hydrosphere, and the atmosphere, all support life, but it's important that we recognize that the lithosphere also supports life, and that again is A and B. So guys, that's a wrap for this part of the segment. We've looked at some basic terminology. We've looked at various ways of which these terms can be assessed. This is one way, and it requires a thorough understanding of the terms and being able to differentiate between these. So let's have a little break, and I'll see you in a little while.